afternoon, everyone. It is good to have all of you here. We are really excited. The last event of this series, Meet the Candidates Disability Policy, and we are very excited to welcome Caroline Gleich, who is running for Senate. We have two facilitators here today. We have Kelly Hess with the Institute for Disability and Andrew Riggle with the Disability Law Center. They are going to be taking us through our event questions today. And just as a note for everyone, we do have the chat open for individuals to use if you want to chat with each other, pose questions and whatnot. We also have an ASL interpreter joining us. She should be easily seen, but if for any reason you need her to be pinned or spotlit, please let me know. And then we also have the Q&A chat feature as well. So if you want to pose a question anonymously, you're more than welcome to use that. And I think that is it for me. Andrew and Kelly, I am going to turn the time over to you two to kick us off. Thank you.
Thank you, Aubrey. Caroline, my name is Andrew Riggle, and I'm with the Disability Law Center, and I have the honor of introducing you this morning by reading the bio that you and your team shared with us, and then I will kick us off with the first question, if that's okay with you. So, with that, Caroline Gleich is a professional ski mountaineer and community advocate running for the U.S. Senate in Utah to protect our families, our freedom, and our future. From climbing some of the biggest mountains in the world to testifying before Congress on the climate crisis, she has always used her platform to advocate positive change for people and the planet. Now she's taking on one of her toughest climbs yet, running for the United States Senate to represent the incredible people of Utah, carrying with her the lessons learned from mountains, unwavering commitment, resilience, and determination to make positive change. Caroline is no stranger to an uphill climb, and she's ready to be a voice for Utahns and a senator who will listen, learn, collaborate, and never give up when a challenge is ahead. So again, thank you for joining us, Caroline. And if you're okay, I'll start with our first question.
That would be great. Thank you so much, Andrew. And thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, wonderful. Our first question is a general one, and it is, as a candidate representing all Utahns, please share with us your vision and or mission on how you plan to serve the people of Utah, including those with disabilities.
Well, thank you so much. I was really inspired to run by this call for the next generation of leaders to step up, because it's our generation that's going to have to deal with some of the challenges and issues that Congress is failing to address right now. And I'm Caroline Gleich. My background is as a small business owner, skier, mountaineer, and environmental advocate. And I think we see the best policy. There's a lot of research that shows that the best policy comes when we have people in decision-making positions that come from a variety of different backgrounds. And I really believe that the diversity of our community of Utahns is one of our greatest strengths. And so my vision is to help to create better policy and really a culture where everybody in Utah feels like they belong. And I have a lot of different friends and close family members that have differing abilities or disabilities. And whether it's creating more funding for spinal cord injury research or traumatic brain injury research or expanding ADA accessibility, this is a top priority to ensure that every Utahn and every American has access to living the American dream and to build a culture of belonging and inclusivity. It's not just good for people, but it really helps for policy as well. And so thank you so much for having me today, and I'm excited to answer some of the questions and chat with you more.
Well, thanks for kicking us off in such a great way. Kelly?
All right. Hi, Caroline. Um, your next question is around access to education. So many students in Utah take advantage of programs such as career and technical education, college readiness preparation, and internships. However, students with disabilities are largely excluded from these programs, despite being able to participate in them if provided with the proper supports. How will you ensure that students with disabilities have equal access to the same programs and opportunities as their non-disabled peers?
Well, thank you for this question. And I really believe that higher education and education in general, that everybody deserves a quality education. And so expanding programs and ensuring that students with disabilities have equal access is incredibly important. And one of the things that I've learned in my work on policy is the importance of centering the individuals and building individual relationships, and figuring out the best path forward, because accommodation and accessibility can look very different depending on the person. And so understanding the needs of individuals in the community, and then working to make sure that those are reflected in working groups and in policies, and that things can be catered to differing ability levels, and accommodations can be sort of specific to what students need. That's a big goal for sure. And then I also think the affordability is another part of it, to ensure that there's greater affordability. And so looking at possible grant programs or expanding things like that to ensure that that there's equal access to the same programs and opportunities.
Great, thank you so much.
You're welcome. And I will kind of tag on to Kelly's question with one about employment opportunities. And that is, currently data shows that individuals with any disability in Utah have a community-based employment rate of 53% compared to the overall employment rate of 78% for all Utahns. Many Utahns with disabilities can and want to work, but don't have access to the supports necessary to find and retain employment. How will you work to increase employment opportunities for individuals with disabilities in Utah, ensuring they receive the necessary supports and accommodations for job success?
Thank you so much. Yeah, one of my dear friends was in a climbing accident several years ago and fell. And I've had a couple friends actually that have severed part of their spinal cords and have ended up in wheelchairs, and seen life through their eyes and the challenges that they face just in finding parking and getting into a building. It's very clear that we need to do more to ensure, to work with businesses and with public-private partnerships to ensure that, I mean, everything just from the snow removal on the sides of the handicapped parking spots, and then more broadly, that we are making sure people can get into buildings so that they can work. And I think, again, it would be building different public-private partnerships and different working groups, meeting with businesses and individuals to hear how I can best accommodate those different needs, and how I could help as a U.S. Senator with the federal government to ensure that we are properly funding businesses to become more ADA accessible, and also looking at things like mentorship or other programs to directly support individuals and ensure that we can start to close that gap between that 53% and the 78%. And also to really bring more dignity, and to make sure that our members of our community with disabilities are able to also access buildings and other places and employment opportunities with dignity.
Thank you so much, Kelly.
All right, that leads nicely into our next question. Um, Accessible infrastructure is critical to Utahns with disabilities in order to live, work, and participate in their communities. Increased access in areas such as public transportation, sidewalks, buildings, and physical or online information will allow for greater community integration for Utahns. How will you help our state and community to be more supportive of people with disabilities and their families?
Well, one of the examples that I've seen that has worked really well where I live is the National Ability Center, and especially the programs that they offer to help people experience outdoor recreation and skiing. And I would love to see that kind of model expanded. So they work really closely too with people on that individual level. And they build all these different kinds of bikes and ski accommodations and walkers you can take on the trails. And there's so many different ways with creativity that we can work. And I know for myself that being able to get into the great outdoors, for example, has greatly improved my quality of life. And it's one of the best things about living in Utah. And so to look at how we could expand things like the National Ability Center, and again, these public, private, and non-profit partnerships to take that kind of model and make it statewide, so that we could have National Ability centers all over the state to help get people skiing and hiking and biking and into the outdoors. And they also have just a great community headquarters up in Park City, and horses and archery and all these different things. And so I've been really supportive and grateful for their work, and especially my friend Louie that was in a ski accident and was paralyzed from his thoracic spine. So they worked really closely with him to build a bunch of different kind of ski setups, and now he's able to go ski independently. And it was a couple-year process working with him, but I think that that's what it really takes to ensure that people with differing abilities can be fully able to participate in their communities. And I think also just thinking about the accessibility in public transportation, doing those things to make our communities more accessible, it's good for everybody. Like, it's helpful for parents that have a stroller, and I think it can really benefit all of us. And so it really makes a lot of sense to continue to build that infrastructure and find more ways that we can integrate people with differing abilities into our communities.
Great, thank you so much.
Hey, I'm going to switch topics on you entirely now, Caroline, and ask about mental health. A recent report from the IDRPP shows 61% of Utahns with intellectual and developmental disabilities also have a co-occurring mental health diagnosis. However, mental health services in Utah are not currently accessible for individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities. How will you address the mental health needs of Utahns with disabilities, particularly those in rural areas?
Well, thank you for this question. And I know that this is something that's really top of mind for many Utahns, and especially for young people. I would love to work with healthcare providers and the government and insurance companies to ensure that people have more access to preventative mental health care, because too often I see that things have to get to a crisis level before people can get the help that they need and deserve. And I think if we invested more in preventative measures, we could help keep a lot of people, frankly, alive. The rates of Utahns that have died by suicide have been increasing, and it just breaks my heart that we don't have more of a safety net or resources. And so expanding preventative mental health care and seeing if we can find more ways to offer those things with telemedicine, and also looking at to recruit and train more healthcare workers and especially mental health care providers, because I think part of the lack of access is because of a shortage of workers. And so how can we get more people trained and more people into those positions where they can help be that listening ear and provide that support that people need? So yes, preventative healthcare, telemedicine, recruitment and retention of healthcare workers, especially mental health care workers. And then in the rural areas, I think that telemedicine does offer a lot, but also to ensure we have places that people can go to hospitals and other treatment places, to ensure that those are funded in our rural areas as well. Those are vital to ensuring that we have that kind of thriving society and culture where people can be the best versions of themselves, where we celebrate people's differing abilities, and where we can find a turnaround where we can take challenges and turn them into things that are actually our greatest strengths.
Thank you so much.
All right. Now we're going to go into a question that centers around disability rights. People with disabilities are often excluded or segregated from the community at large due to stereotypes, misconceptions, and sometimes from fear from people without disabilities. In fact, in June of 2024, the U.S. Department of Justice issued a letter to the state of Utah citing that it is in violation of Title II of the Americans with Disabilities Act due to Utah's ongoing segregation of individuals with disabilities in services, supports, and employment programs. How can we, as a society, better support the inclusion of people with disabilities in our communities?
Thank you. Yes, this is, again, this breaks my heart because I know that in our hearts as Utahns that we are a group of people that celebrate differences. And so I really would want to model that as our next senator and as a leader. And to me, a lot of being a good advocate for people is to really center the individual relationships and to get to know people on the individual level. And when I think about some of the closest friends in my life, I think about my friend Sarah Heron. She was born with a limb difference, without one arm, and my friend Vasu, who is lost his leg, and then my friend Quinn and my friend Louie, who they've both suffered from spinal cord injuries. And I think about some of the things that they've taught me. And again, first, I think it takes building those relationships on the individual level so that we don't speak about a group. Like, I think it's easy I think it's really important to center the needs of individuals first and build those relationships authentically so that we can be good allies and good voices and support the leadership of our disability community, because I think we already have so many great leaders in that community that what I would want to do is just figure out the best way to support them and to be a voice. And another personal story is my husband's grandpa was in a car accident right after his dad was born, and he became a quadriplegic. And his wife, my grandma-in-law, wrote a book about caring for people and how to be a caregiver. And I think sometimes when we have people in our lives with differing abilities, that there's a tendency to sort of shy away. But instead, I would be someone that shows up to bear witness, to listen, to learn, and to find the best way that I can support the leadership of other people. And so I think that that's the key there, is to really get to know people with disabilities and understand their lived experiences. To me, that's the most important thing. Don't try to speak about people in generalities, but really take that time to listen, learn, to show up. And sometimes it's just literally just showing up and just being there with someone. That's one of the best things that you can do. And so I think that would be the same approach that I would take. And I think it would be a helpful approach for more of our leaders and more people in our state here.
Great, thank you so much. I think that's it as far as our formal questions. I'm gonna refer back to Aubrey to see if there's questions from the those that are listening online.
Yeah, and we do have a question from an audience member, and we do have time for at least one more question, if that's all right with you, Caroline.
Of
Um,
course.
so this is coming from one of our attendees, and it's a little bit of a two-parter, so I'm just gonna pose both parts to you at once. So the first question is, how familiar are you with the funding issues for individuals to receive services here in Utah? And then the follow-up to that is that um, you may be aware that individuals currently on are who are on the wait list may be on the wait list for over 15 years, if not more, as they wait for services. And this, of course, inhibits them from receiving service. In your opinion, how can this be addressed?
Yeah, well, I think we see a lot of frustration right now with the inefficiency of Congress and of our leaders. And instead of solving the problems, we just see a lot of back and forth and fighting and pointing fingers. And so to me, I think a big part of the solution is to get new leaders elected, because if we want to change the gridlock and the corruption in politics, we need to change the people that we send to be our politicians. And the fact that there are 15-year waiting lists is absolutely heartbreaking because, yeah, and the funding, Kristen's just, I see her response that the funding issues are just in Utah. And so I think, again, potentially to build these federal and state partnerships to see how we can reduce that amount of time and to see if there's ways that we can work with the federal government to get more support to address that backlog and to support Utahns. That would be something I would love to do as a senator, because I feel one of the other challenges we have in this state is we have so many of our leaders that just are fighting the federal government at every turn. And it would be great if we had someone instead that was finding a way of how we can partner and bring more support back to the state.
Excellent. Thank you so much. I think as far as time goes, I'm not sure I want to pose one more question to you just to make sure that we keep on track. So if it's okay, Kelly and Andrew, I'm just going to go ahead and move us along our agenda. Caroline, do you have any final statements or remarks that you would like to give to us as before we part?
Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you so much for having me and for I'd love to keep in touch if you have any feedback or ideas on more ways that I can support. And yes, thank you for facilitating this discussion and for your leadership. And yes, just please keep in touch on how I can continue to support your leadership and the things that you're working on through this campaign and beyond.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Caroline. We so appreciated having you today and wish you the best of luck as we move forward. As people know, ballots started to go out yesterday, so please keep your eyes peeled for them. And rather than me giving the spiel about voting registration, Andrew, I am going to turn some time over to you to do that.
Thanks, Aubrey. The deadline to register to vote by mail is October 25th. You can register at any early voting location or your polling location on November 5th, Election Day. If you have a disability that makes it hard to read or mark a ballot independently, you might be able to vote electronically. You can make your choices and return your ballot using your phone, tablet, or computer. Call or email your county clerk's office to find out how to sign up. For more information on the elections and your rights, visit disabilitylawcenter.org/voting-rights. And that is all, Aubrey. Back to you.
Perfect. Thank you, Andrew. And just so everyone knows, I'm also working to get both of those links in the chat for folks in case you want them. I will just also give one final statement before we sign off today. This does conclude our series for our Meet the Candidates Disability Policy events. You all will be receiving a link to the recordings for each of these. So if you missed any of them or want to review them, you're welcome to go back and check them out. So that will be getting sent through your email. And I think that concludes today's event. Caroline, we just want to say thank you one more time. Thank you as well to our ASL interpreter for doing such good work today. Thank you, Kelly and Andrew, for your wonderful facilitation. And finally, thank you to all of our attendees. We appreciate you being here. Again, if you do have any questions or have, any comments that you want to state, please feel free to email me. You've been receiving my emails for the past 2 weeks nonstop, so hopefully you have that as well, but I'll put that in the chat. And I think that that is it for today. If you are interested in that final voting rights link, please just give me 1 second to throw that into the chat. And other than that, you are good to go for the rest of your Wednesdays. Thank you.